Hello and welcome, my friends. I'm so glad you could join me today. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever found yourself overwhelmed by emotions during tough times? Maybe it's the pressure at work, personal struggles, or simply the chaos of everyday life. We all face challenges that test our patience, our inner peace, and our emotional stability. It can feel like a storm inside, intense, unpredictable, and sometimes all-consuming. But, what if I told you that there's a way to navigate through these emotional storms? A way to find calm amidst the chaos, clarity in the confusion, and balance in the face of adversity? Today, I want to talk to you about a powerful, yet simple tool, one that has been used for thousands of years: Buddhist teachings and practices for emotional regulation. The wisdom of Buddhism offers us timeless guidance on how to manage our emotions and find peace, especially when everything around us seems to be falling apart. Now, I know what you're thinking: managing emotions? Is that even possible when life is so unpredictable and challenging? I get it. We live in a world that's constantly throwing curveballs at us. Whether it's the pressure of deadlines, personal loss, or the uncertainty of the future, emotions often seem to rise up unbidden, taking control of our minds and hearts. We feel anger, anxiety, frustration, and fear, and it feels impossible to find a way out. But here's the thing: in Buddhism, emotions aren't viewed as something to be suppressed or ignored. Instead, they are seen as a natural part of being human. In fact, the Buddha himself taught that emotions are like waves in the ocean: they rise and fall, they come and go. What matters most is not the emotions themselves, but how we respond to them. You see, when we react impulsively to our emotions, whether it's lashing out in anger, giving in to despair, or letting anxiety control our actions, we only make the situation worse. We add more fuel to the fire, more turbulence to the storm. But, and this is where the beauty of Buddhist wisdom comes in, we can learn to create a space between our emotions and our reactions. Through practices like mindfulness and meditation, we can pause for a moment, breathe, and choose how we respond rather than just reacting out of habit. Let me tell you a little more about how this works. The Buddhist teachings focus on understanding the nature of suffering and the path to overcoming it. One of the central tenets of Buddhism is that all things are impermanent. Emotions, just like everything else, are transient. They rise, they peak, and they eventually subside. This means that no matter how overwhelming or intense our feelings may be in the moment, they won't last forever. And this is where mindfulness becomes so powerful. Mindfulness allows us to observe our emotions without getting swept away by them. Imagine for a moment that you're standing on the shore of an ocean, watching the waves come and go. You don't fight them, you don't try to stop them, you simply observe them, acknowledging their presence without being consumed by them. In the same way, mindfulness teaches us to observe our emotions without letting them control us. We don't need to act on every impulse, we can simply be aware, present in the moment, and allow the emotion to pass. This brings us to the practice of meditation, a key aspect of Buddhist teachings. Through meditation, we cultivate a sense of inner calm and clarity. We learn to focus on our breath, to center our minds, and to anchor ourselves in the present moment. And it's in this stillness that we begin to notice the spaces between our thoughts, the gaps between our reactions. These spaces allow us to pause, to reflect, and to choose a response that aligns with our values, not our immediate emotional impulses. In challenging situations, this practice of mindfulness and meditation becomes even more crucial. When we are faced with stress, conflict, or difficult emotions, it's easy to react impulsively. But with the tools of Buddhist wisdom, we can transform those moments. We can stop, take a deep breath, and choose to respond from a place of calm and clarity rather than from a place of panic or frustration. Buddhism also teaches us the importance of compassion both for others and for ourselves. When we are struggling with our emotions, it's easy to fall into self-criticism, blaming ourselves for feeling the way we do. But the Buddhist teachings remind us that we are all human. We all experience suffering, and it's okay to feel the way we do. What matters is how we handle it. So, instead of being hard on yourself, practice self-compassion. Treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer a friend in need. This doesn't mean excusing harmful behavior, but it does mean acknowledging your emotions with kindness and understanding, giving yourself permission to feel without judgment. Now, I'm sure many of you are wondering, how do I begin applying these practices in my daily life? The truth is, it starts with small steps. You don't need to be perfect, and you don't need to change everything at once. The first step is to become aware of your emotions when they arise. The next step is to pause and create that space between the emotion and your reaction. Then, take a few deep breaths and ask yourself, how do I want to respond? In that moment of pause, you have the power to choose. As we move forward in this journey together, I encourage you to take these teachings into your own life. Remember, it's not about controlling your emotions or pretending they don't exist. It's about understanding them, observing them without attachment, and responding in a way that fosters peace and balance in your life. So, my friends, as we explore these Buddhist practices in more depth, I want you to keep an open heart and an open mind. Let's embrace the wisdom that's been passed down through centuries, and use it to find our own path to emotional balance, no matter what life throws our way. Are you ready to take the first step toward emotional freedom? Let's begin this journey together. When we think about emotions, we often see them as something we need to avoid or suppress. In today's world, emotions are frequently portrayed as obstacles, things we need to get rid of in order to succeed, stay focused, or simply keep it together. However, in Buddhism, emotions are viewed differently. They are not seen as something to be fought against or ignored. Instead, they are an integral part of the human experience. Think of them as waves in the ocean. They rise and fall, they come and go. They are a natural part of who we are. The Buddha himself taught that emotions are neither inherently good nor bad. It's not the emotions themselves that create suffering, it's how we react to them that shapes our experience and influences our state of being. Imagine for a moment that you're standing on the shore of an ocean. You watch as wave after wave crashes onto the beach. Sometimes, the waves are gentle, barely reaching your feet. Other times, they are powerful and overwhelming. Now, what happens if you try to stop the waves? What if you fought against them, tried to control them, or forced them to behave a certain way? It would be impossible, right? The waves would keep coming, and you would only end up exhausted, frustrated, and defeated. This is how it is with our emotions. When we try to control or suppress them, we only create more tension within ourselves. The waves keep coming, and we only wear ourselves out fighting a battle that can't be won. But here's the good news, Buddhism offers us a different approach. Instead of fighting our emotions, we are taught to observe them, to notice them without judgment. Just as we can watch the waves without trying to control them, we can watch our emotions without being swept away by them. This practice of observation is the cornerstone of mindfulness, one of the key tools Buddhism provides for emotional regulation. Mindfulness is the art of being fully present in the moment. It's about paying attention to our thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations without getting caught up in them. It's about creating a space between the stimulus, whether it's an external situation or an internal thought, and our reaction to it. In that space, we have the power to choose how we respond, rather than simply reacting out of habit or emotion. So, when we feel anger, frustration, or sadness rising within us, we don't have to let those emotions take control. We don't need to act on them immediately. Instead, mindfulness allows us to pause. We create a gap, a moment of stillness where we can simply observe what is happening inside us. We acknowledge the emotion, without identifying with it, without letting it define who we are. This is where the magic happens. In that space of awareness, we can take a step back and ask ourselves, what is this emotion trying to teach me? What is the root of this feeling? How can I respond in a way that is true to my values and not just my impulses? When we create this space between stimulus and response, we begin to take control of our emotional experience, rather than letting it control us. Buddhism also teaches us that emotions are not permanent. Just like the waves of the ocean, emotions come and go. They are fleeting, ever-changing. No emotion lasts forever. This is an essential insight that helps us manage our feelings. When we experience intense emotions, whether it's anger, fear, or joy, we can remind ourselves that these feelings are temporary. They will pass. By recognizing the impermanence of emotions, we stop clinging to them, whether we are holding on to a positive emotion or resisting a negative one. Think about it. When we cling to positive emotions, we create a kind of attachment. We want to hold on to that feeling of happiness, joy, or excitement, but inevitably, those feelings fade. When we resist negative emotions, we create tension within ourselves, trying to push them away, but this only makes them stronger. The Buddhist approach teaches us to accept all emotions, both the pleasant and the unpleasant, as part of the natural flow of life. By practicing acceptance and non-attachment, we allow ourselves to experience our emotions without getting trapped in them. So, what can we do to develop this skill of mindfulness and emotional awareness? The most powerful tool Buddhism offers us is meditation. Meditation helps us cultivate mindfulness by training our minds to focus, to be present, and to observe our thoughts and emotions without judgment. Through regular meditation, we learn to create that space between stimulus and reaction. We learn to recognize when emotions are arising, and we become more skilled at responding to them with calmness and clarity, rather than reacting impulsively. But meditation is not just something we do in a quiet room or during formal practice. It can be integrated into every moment of our lives. We can practice mindfulness when we are stuck in traffic, when we are having a difficult conversation, or when we are dealing with a stressful situation at work. The key is to stay present, to observe our emotions as they arise, and to respond with intention, rather than reaction. Another important aspect of Buddhist emotional regulation is the cultivation of compassion, both for others and for ourselves. Often, we are our own harshest critics. We beat ourselves up for feeling angry or sad. We may think that we are not supposed to feel these emotions, or that they make us weak. But Buddhism teaches us to be kind and compassionate to ourselves. Emotions are not a reflection of our worth. They are simply part of the human experience. By treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer a friend in need, we can begin to accept our emotions with compassion, rather than judgment. Ultimately, Buddhism teaches us that the key to emotional balance is awareness and acceptance. When we can observe our emotions without judgment, when we can create space between stimulus and reaction, we begin to free ourselves from the grip of our feelings. We no longer need to be controlled by our emotions. Instead, we become the observers, the conscious creators of our emotional responses. This is true emotional freedom. As we continue on this journey, I encourage you to practice these teachings in your own life. Start with small moments of mindfulness, even if it's just a few breaths in the middle of a stressful situation. Observe your emotions, without judgment, and create that space between feeling and response. With time, you will find that you can maintain your balance, even in the most challenging circumstances. The Buddha's wisdom offers us the tools to cultivate inner peace, to find stability in the midst of chaos, and to navigate our emotional lives with grace and wisdom. This is the path to emotional freedom, and it is available to each of us, right now. Let's take the first step together and begin to transform our relationship with our emotions. In our fast-paced world, emotions can sometimes feel like they are controlling us, rather than the other way around. Life is full of stress, chaos, and unexpected challenges that can overwhelm us. But Buddhism offers us valuable tools to regain control, manage our emotions, and maintain inner peace even in the midst of the most turbulent situations. One of the most profound practices in Buddhism that helps us navigate emotional challenges is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the act of paying attention to the present moment, without judgment. It's about being fully aware of what's happening in our thoughts, feelings, and sensations without getting caught up in them. When we practice mindfulness, we don't try to change or suppress our emotions. Instead, we observe them as they arise, letting them come and go, like waves in the ocean. This practice helps us step back from our emotions, creating space between what we're feeling and how we react. Over time, this space allows us to respond to difficult situations with a calm and clear mind, instead of reacting impulsively. But mindfulness alone is not always enough. When emotions become intense or overwhelming, we need something more to ground ourselves. This is where breathing exercises come into play. Imagine you're in the middle of a stressful situation, perhaps a heated conversation or an overwhelming deadline. The tension in your body begins to build, and your mind starts racing. In moments like these, taking a deep breath can make all the difference. By focusing on the breath, we activate our body's natural relaxation response. Deep breathing helps calm the nervous system, steady the heartbeat, and bring us back to the present moment. The act of breathing deeply brings us into the here and now, helping us shift from a state of stress to a state of calm. Breathing exercises don't need to be complicated. You can start by simply taking a few deep breaths, in through the nose, and out through the mouth. Focus on each breath, allowing the air to fill your lungs and then slowly releasing it. With each breath, you create more space for peace. The beauty of this practice is that it's always available to us. We don't need to be sitting in a quiet room or practicing meditation for hours. We can do it anywhere, anytime. Whether we're at work, in a meeting, or in the middle of a difficult conversation, we can always take a moment to breathe. Another powerful tool in Buddhist emotional control is compassion. We often think of compassion as something we extend to others, but it's just as important to show compassion toward ourselves. When we're feeling emotional, we tend to be our own harshest critics. We judge ourselves for feeling upset, frustrated, or angry, which only intensifies the emotions. Compassion asks us to be kind to ourselves, to treat ourselves with the same understanding and patience that we would show to a friend. When we practice self-compassion, we don't beat ourselves up for our emotions. Instead, we recognize that it's natural to feel what we feel, and we give ourselves permission to experience those emotions without shame. Finally, one of the most effective Buddhist practices for emotional control is the concept of impermanence. In Buddhism, everything is considered impermanent, including our emotions. This means that no feeling, no matter how intense, will last forever. When we're in the middle of an emotional storm, it can feel like the world is closing in on us. But by remembering that our emotions are temporary, we can gain perspective. The anger, the frustration, the anxiety, it's all part of the ebb and flow of life. Just as the tide rises and falls, our emotions will rise and fall too. This understanding allows us to hold our emotions more lightly, knowing that they are not permanent and that we don't have to be defined by them. The key to emotional control, according to Buddhist teachings, is not about suppressing or avoiding emotions, but about developing a different relationship with them. Instead of reacting impulsively to our emotions, we learn to observe them with mindfulness and awareness. We allow ourselves to feel our emotions fully, but we don't let them control us. By incorporating mindfulness, breathing exercises, compassion, and the awareness of impermanence into our daily lives, we can cultivate a deeper sense of emotional balance and inner peace. It's important to remember that these practices are not quick fixes. They require dedication, patience, and a willingness to cultivate them over time. But with consistent practice, we can transform the way we experience and respond to our emotions. We can learn to face life's challenges with greater resilience, clarity, and peace. So, the next time you're feeling overwhelmed or emotionally charged, take a deep breath. Practice mindfulness. Show yourself compassion. And remember that this, too, shall pass. In life, we are often faced with moments of intense emotional turmoil, stressful events, difficult conversations, unexpected setbacks. It's during these moments that our emotional balance is put to the test. But maintaining emotional balance is not something that happens overnight. It's a continuous journey, a practice that requires patience, compassion, and commitment. Buddhism offers us a powerful path to not only navigate these moments but to grow from them. At its core, Buddhism teaches that emotional freedom isn't about avoiding discomfort or pushing away negative emotions. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The path to true emotional balance involves learning how to face discomfort, how to sit with it, and how to respond with wisdom rather than react out of fear or anger. This is where mindfulness and meditation come into play. Mindfulness, as you may know, is the practice of being fully aware of the present moment without judgment. It's about observing our thoughts, our feelings, and the sensations in our body without getting caught up in them. When we practice mindfulness, we create a space between ourselves and our emotions. We stop being victims to our emotions and start becoming conscious observers of them. This is crucial because when we're aware, we have a choice. We can choose how to respond instead of merely reacting. But mindfulness alone is not always enough when we're in the midst of emotional distress. That's where meditation comes in. Meditation is a deeper form of mindfulness that allows us to still the mind, calm the body, and reconnect with our inner peace. Through regular meditation, we strengthen our ability to detach from our emotional impulses and create a deeper sense of emotional regulation. Meditation is not about shutting down our emotions, it's about observing them, understanding them, and allowing them to flow through us without taking over our entire being. As we continue this practice of mindfulness and meditation, we begin to develop something profound: compassion. Buddhism teaches that compassion is not just for others but for ourselves too. Often, when we are struggling emotionally, we are our harshest critics. We berate ourselves for feeling angry, anxious, or sad. But self-compassion is about treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer to a friend in need. When we approach our emotions with self-compassion, we allow ourselves to feel them fully without judgment. And in doing so, we release the power they have over us. But let's be clear, this journey toward emotional balance is not a linear one. It's not about having perfect control over our emotions every single time. In fact, emotional balance is not a destination, but a process, a continuous practice that we engage with every day. Some days will be easier than others. Some moments will test our patience, and others will challenge our ability to stay calm. But each time we practice mindfulness, meditation, and self-compassion, we grow stronger. We develop the resilience needed to face the storms of life without being shaken by them. One of the most important teachings of Buddhism is the concept of impermanence. Everything is temporary: our emotions, our experiences, our circumstances. When we remember this, we realize that no emotional state is permanent. If we're feeling overwhelmed or angry, we understand that these feelings will eventually pass. And this understanding allows us to respond with calmness instead of resistance. The key to emotional balance is not in trying to control our emotions but in learning to flow with them. We learn to let go of the need to force things to be a certain way. Instead, we accept the ebb and flow of emotions, knowing that they are as transient as the clouds in the sky. As you continue to practice mindfulness and meditation, remember that emotional balance is not an end goal, it's a lifelong journey. There will be moments when you slip, when you react instead of respond, when emotions feel overwhelming. And that's okay. The key is to keep practicing, to keep showing up for yourself, and to keep learning from each experience. With time, you will find that you are more resilient, more centered, and more at peace, no matter what life throws your way. So, as we close today's discussion, I want to leave you with this thought: emotional balance is not about perfection, it's about progress. It's about showing up every day, doing the work, and giving yourself grace. It's about learning to respond with compassion, to observe your emotions without being consumed by them, and to accept the impermanence of all things. This path is not always easy, but it is the path to lasting peace. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and may you continue to walk the path of emotional balance with wisdom, love, and resilience.